Hello and welcome to PM Express. My name is Nana Ansakwa, and as part of our motivational and inspirational week, I've come back here to speak to Bafo Agyemangua. I think he's a man who's got in-depth knowledge about his country and a love for his country, and who could by all means spare a moment to share his feelings about Ghana. Why not? Let's see what he has positive that we can all feed from. This is PM Express. Hello and welcome back. Now, you see, I've been to this house before. I spoke to Bafo Agyemangua. And as you know, this week and the week after, we're going to do what we term as inspirational or motivational. And as the man is in depth and has been there, I thought, if you permit me your busy schedule, let me come back and have a discussion with you. First day I came here, I spoke about a book, My Ghanaian Odyssey. The last paragraph is what I want to set the tone for our discussion. Now listen to what Bafo wrote. He says, as a people, how we have lived our lives today will determine how future generations will live. If we squander all the resources, deplete our forests, kill our water bodies and leave empty coffers, we cannot expect our children to have a blissful life. Indeed, we should seek to multiply what we have inherited in order for the next generation to live better lives. The future of any society depends on the actions or inactions of the living generation. Thus, securing a peaceful, united, prosperous and a democratic future will depend on how today's leaders and stakeholders conduct themselves, manage the affairs of state, and uphold the cherished values and principles of multi-party politics and multi-ethnic settings. Welcome again, Bafo.
Thank you so much. Good to have you again.
I must say I am grateful for granting me this interview, but this is what I want us to talk about. It is something that breaks my heart, and I think any true Ghanaian, it will break your heart, considering we have become a very ungrateful generation. When you were growing up, back in the days in Bechem, was that generation also ungrateful compared to what they inherited from, or is it a new phenomenon?
No, I think it's a new phenomenon. In my time, the time of my generation, certainly our parents, our grandparents, were more mindful of society and what society possessed. For instance, without the kind of education that all of us have, our parents knew how to preserve nature, how to preserve their farms, how to preserve natural artifacts. And I know that many a time my grandmother will even remind you of something that you shouldn't do because it's going to disturb the balance of nature. I think coming all this while, I think somehow we seem to be forgetting how we were brought up. Because this current generation appear to be unmindful. That is ourselves transporting ourselves to the present. Mm-hmm. We seem a little bit unmindful of what we need to do to preserve our society in order to ensure a better future. Mm-hmm. People come and pass. So we are all in transition. But what is important for every member of society is to be conscious of the fact that you are simply in transition. Like Shakespeare once said, it's like a stage. You are coming to play your part, and the rest, you leave the scene for somebody else to take up scene two. Mm-hmm. You see, if you are conscious of that, then you'll be very mindful of what you do to what we have currently. Maybe we are using so many words here. In simple terms, every generation has a responsibility, not only to preserve what we've inherited, but in fact to seek to multiply what we've inherited in order to ensure that future generations can also live better lives. That's the bottom line.
Sustainability.
Sustainability. So, look, I went to Bechem some months ago and drove to Jumo, where I went to primary school. There was a river. I'm saying was because what I saw a few months ago is not what I used to see 50 years ago. This river was such a huge river. It wasn't easy to cross. Mm-hmm. I passed by a few months ago, and you can literally jump over the river.
Wow.
So what is happening is that water body is disappearing. You see? Geographers have also told us that once upon a time, even in Kumasi, there was a Subin River which, drove through the city. Mm-hmm. Now where is it? It's gone. So, truly, historically, such natural things do disappear depending on how we manage them. But unfortunately, for us Africans and Ghanaians in particular, we don't seem to be mindful of that. If you go to other European countries where there are big rivers, you see how they preserve the river, nourish it. If you go,
keep it
trench
clean.
it, keep it clean, have rules that they enforce to ensure that the river will be preserved, stays. We don't do that. Look, there's this big river crossing when you go to Winneba. What's the name? After you pass McCarthy Hill. Wager. Used to be bigger than what we see. If you drive by today, you see that we have allowed people to build houses right on the edge of the bank of the river. What we are doing is killing the body, even though occasionally, when nature gets angry, gets flooded, then people run to government, send NADMO and all that. You see, we are funny people.
Bafo, what is it that makes us think now? We seem to be a generation that even next week is too far away for us to think. Most of the problems we are solving today are like 10 years ago. I mean, you look at Dumso, and we are solving a problem like 10 years ago. You look at water, 10 years ago. Education, probably 25 years ago. That's what we are solving today. So we are not actually putting anything on the table today for even tomorrow. What makes us?
It's very disturbing. And I cannot go back and blame anyone or anybody, but the leaderships we've been having. The reason why we have governments in society is because all of us may not have the luxury of time and the kind of support mechanisms you need to think and plan for a people. So being civilized, we say, look, we're going to have a government. We're going to entrust this government with all the powers that are necessary, with all the resources that are necessary at the disposal of the government. So the government can think, plan, create, and whatever for us. That's the essence of government. But it seems to me that over the years, over the decades, we have not been lucky as a people to have governments that think of the future. And especially since we embark on the Fourth Republic, governments are becoming a little bit more short-sighted. Even though I have to confess, there have been some major projects initiated by these governments, some of these governments, for the future. For instance, Nkrumah did the Akosombo Dam, without which today I don't know where we will be. Mm-hmm. Kufuor has added the Bui Dam, without which I don't know what future generation will be. Mm-hmm. And I'm sure President Mahama is also working on other kinds of projects to sustain that. If that continues, then it means that we are securing our future so far as electricity supply is concerned. But in most other areas, we've been very, very short-sighted. And that is what is killing us. You mentioned the point of people wanting instant gratification. You didn't use the term, but that's exactly what you said. We seem to be so interested in what will satisfy us today, instant gratification. So somebody leaves university without anything to recommend him or her, without working to buy a bicycle, without doing anything, the person realizes that the shortest cut to wealth and fame is to be in politics. So you get into politics. Then you realize that you have only 4 years, because after 4 years, you don't know whether you'll be there or not. So what? Therefore, grab as much as you can, because you don't know whether the 4 years will meet you the next. So these are things that's happening. And of course, added to that, Nana, is this new, very, I don't know the word to describe it. So for lack of better word, I say, very interesting development, where people are assuming all kinds of divine powers to promise people to be able to make it overnight. I'm talking about these, what I would call syncretic churches,
Yeah.
where every Saturday morning, Sunday morning, we are inundated with all kinds and manners of preachings
Financial
on the
breakthrough.
television and radio, promising people, first claiming to heal people, and promising people, even to the extent of saying, I can get you a visa to go to America. So all of us are being turned into instant gratifiers. We want something. And that is hurting us. It's not making us to think ahead. It's not making us to plan ahead. It's not making us to think of the future and therefore generations ahead of us.
But for just, is it not ironical? You look at industrial area where a great chunk of it has been turned to churches, and on Wednesday afternoon, young men and women go there and pray for jobs. And it used to be an industrial area. Isn't it so ironical?
Very ironic indeed. We've destroyed the industry, and in its place is a church that will make you believe that if you come there to pray, you get a job that has been destroyed in the first place. That's the irony of it all. And you see, these are things we are not talking about as a people, because truly though, Ghanaians are very religious. No doubt. All of us are. But I think, like many other things we have copied from abroad, we have become more religious than those who so-called introduce this form of religion to us. Because our religiosity as Africans was practiced in different ways.
Sure.
In different ways. In ways that enable our fathers and grandfathers and forefathers to exist peacefully in harmony with nature. To exist knowing that crime in society was unacceptable.
Sure.
Knowing that hurting my neighbor was hurting myself. In the book that you referred to earlier, there's somewhere I describe some interesting intellectual experience I had as an undergrad at Cape Coast University, where this lecturer, Dogbe, took us through what he called the weistic philosophy to describe the African sociological existence. Weism, as opposed to the Western philosophy of a self-centeredness, Cartesian kinds of philosophy. In our history and culture, I exist because you are.
Yeah.
If you don't exist, I don't exist. So I saw myself and the meaning to my life as coexisting with yours. So to destroy your life was to destroy my own. That was the weistic philosophy that we had. But through Christianity and Western kind of education, we have shifted away from that to accept the self-centeredness of
Me,
Western
myself, and I.
philosophy. Me, myself, and I. You got it right. And that is what is manifesting in our politics, in our economic management, and the management of resources that we have. For instance, I've always wondered, if you look at the natural resources that this country has, and I've just returned from Liberia after 5 years working with the United Nations, and I know the amount of natural resources Liberia has. So it is with many African countries. I was in Tanzania for 4 years, and I saw the same. If you look at these natural resources, you wonder, how can we say we are poor? Why should we be poor?
It doesn't make sense. Is it?
It's such a contradiction, you wonder. But we sit by and say we are poor. Meanwhile, our leaders, people that we have entrusted our lives to by giving them the power, they sit there and sign contracts that literally gives our birthright to others to enrich themselves. You wonder. So talking about the self-centeredness, these are the manifestations of what we're talking about. I'll tell you a story now. When I lived in Tanzania, I was told a very interesting story. Do you know that Nyerere, who was president of Tanzania until I think 1992 or 3, I've forgotten the exact year, where he abdicated power after 24 years and lived a private life until he died. Tanzania is blessed with tremendous natural resources, gold, diamond, you name them. In fact, they have a certain gem which is found nowhere else in the world.
Wow.
But Tanzania. It's called Tanzanite.
I see.
Yeah, Tanzanite. It's nowhere else in the world. It's there. But what was very instructive discussing Tanzania's development was that they had just started, when I went there 2005, they had started barely 8 years earlier to give these resources to outsiders to mine, because they don't have the technology.
As usual.
But Nyerere, throughout his leadership, had ruled that nobody will touch these minerals until Tanzania is able to produce its own scientists, technologists, its own machines to dig them.
Wow.
So for all the 20 plus years that Nyerere was president, there was no mining industry in the country. When they started, come and see, it's like wolves pouncing on a dead cow or something. The companies are all over. And because Tanzania has no real experience in dealing with these multinational corporations, we have situations where Tanzania is simply giving these things away. And I work with the United Nations. There was a project that was initiated from the Regional Bureau to help African countries to strengthen their negotiation skills in engaging multinational corporations. So I had the opportunity, together with my colleagues, to meet the Prime Minister, to meet the Governor of the Bank of Tanzania, to work closely with ministers on this project. And one day, we went to the Governor of the bank. I had a delegation from New York. And the Governor told us, look, when they dig the gold, because we don't have the capacity and the technology and the know-how, they carry the dirt, the whole gold dirt, to South Africa or England to refine. And then they tell us this how much gem we got from the dirt. True or false, we don't know.
Let me take a break. Let me take a break here. When we come back, we'll continue this discussion. Food for thought. We're coming back. Hello and welcome back. Well, I'm having a heart-to-heart with Bafo Agyemangua just before we went on the break. The sad story of dig the whole dirt, take it to your country, ring me, send me a text, fax, email, WhatsApp me. Oh, I had 10 kilos of gold. Well, exactly. In that case, this is your bill.
Precisely. Precisely.
Who in this world, I mean, with all apologies, even Jesus Christ may have even gotten it wrong. Not deliberately, but might have gotten it wrong without, extra checks.
And these are true stories. I'm not creating the story. I was a participant, so I know what I'm talking about.
So my next question then is, assuming this generation we are incapable of, assessing how much resource or the technology to find out everything. These people, this generation in authority now, are those who got the best of education. 1 to a room, 2 to a room. Once upon a time, I hear in Legon, Briscoe and Kous Motors bring cars so that you have a feel of it. And, there were job vacancies so that at least when you wanted to buy a car, you go to these companies. And these are the generation in charge now. Why aren't we, even if we have failed, why aren't we making the effort that the ones behind us don't make the same mistake? What is stopping us?
No, it's all a matter of consciousness. You see, don't be fooled by the fact that Bafo has gone to the university all the way. He's gotten a doctorate degree, he was a professor, and therefore Bafo knows it all. No, it's a charade. Look, I know personally people with very many degrees, high degrees, who are not intelligent in many ways. So I'm saying that the fact that you have gone through the mill of formal education would not necessarily give you the kind of consciousness that you need to be aware of the kinds of issues that we are talking about. You see, and that to me, to a large extent, has been the problems we're having. Because if you go through the school, the assumption is that you are better in terms of knowledge. in terms of your ability to discriminate between the right and wrong and all that. But experiences also help in education. So it's not the textbook education we're talking about. It's got to be backed by certain experiences, empirically or otherwise. But most of us, especially what's happening today, we are getting a lot of people into government, not only in Africa, not only in Ghana, but elsewhere in Africa. People whose background may not recommend them to be making the big decisions for a country like Ghana, 25 million people. You see, Nana, governance, I don't know. In many ways, I sit back and I say, have we cheapened governance or what? I don't understand. You see, because for you to know that the man coming to engage you, to mine your gold, that man has his own objective. And it's simple. Capitalists, they come in to make money. It's as simple as that. If you don't have the knowledge, the experience to engage the person, you walk away with everything that you got without you knowing. Why will some contracts have stipulations that for the next 20 years, don't tax me? For the next 10 years, don't tax me. But I'll bring in everything. You know, all kinds of funny clauses. Why is that happening? Don't we have educated people who engage the people and sign the contracts? We do. But as I said, it requires a certain consciousness. And, well, if you want to think the way Nyerere thought, or if you want to do things the way Nkrumah did, I'm afraid it's not possible. Because we've gone past those eras.
If one thing which, if I had a will, one thing that would really make me break the law is people who sign concession in forest areas. It's one thing which really brings sorrow to my soul. Is for somebody to look at a paper and say, yeah, clear this forest area and mine your gold and take it away. It really saddens me as a person.
And Nana, it's not only that. And pollute and destroy our water bodies as you do your mine, especially today that we are so-called Galamsey, it's even worse. And people, our people, government officials, local authorities, law enforcement officers. I mean, look, I have never understood how a non-Ghanaian, we call them Chinese, could come all the way to Ghana through Accra Airport and go all the way to Achim or somewhere, to a village where you've never been, and discover gold, and mine the gold, and take it away, and nobody knows. Look, we are just deceiving ourselves and continue deceiving ourselves. These people do it with the support and protection of our own people. Mm-hmm. When they are destroying the water bodies, we see them, at least we've seen them on television. We know people who make noises about this, like the Osei and others, who are very concerned about this. But then you ask yourself, those with the power of the state, whose job it is to protect the state and its people and its everything, what do they do? One day show of running, sending soldiers and police and making some noises and then back to square one? Look, we've got to be serious.
Because for one man or, two Chinese men to pitch their Galamsey machine and destroy the water for miles, and if it doesn't alert us or doesn't anger us, maybe we are immune to anger.
Maybe we're immune, maybe we're not.
You see, I can't imagine somebody going to the Hansak River and just pollute it so that everybody down the river can't use the river anymore.
You don't have to go all the way to China to do that. In some African countries, if you are not a citizen, you cannot even dare enter the bush without guidance. You see, I know we are hospitable, and that's one of the pride of Ghana. And we are truly, naturally hospitable. But that does not mean that we sit back for our future to be destroyed. Because we are talking about natural resources. These are the kinds of things that are going to hold the country together. If you don't know the role of water in human life, please, you better. Nations, there are some predictions that some parts of the world, the next major world war will be fought over water bodies. And the Nile River is one potential such spot. Because we are increasing in population. When we got our independence in 1957, you know how many we were in Ghana? Just about 7 million. Mm-hmm. Okay? So for just less than 60 years, we have moved from 7 million to 25 million. Next time we will do our census, we could be 32 million. The same river we have, the same forest we have. We are increasing in population, but we are not increasing in natural resources.
Natural for decreasing.
Decreasing. Yeah. We are not preserving what the good Lord endowed us with. We are rather depleting. And we know that there are programs to preserve and expand.
But for you see, however, I have never heard a politician mount a platform and says, as part of my campaign, I am going to increase forest reserve and protect water bodies. So maybe we as a people don't even want to hear that.
Our political campaigns are a big joke. All they do is to promise you that I'll build you a road for you because he came there and saw that you have no road. I'll give you water because there was no water. They look at things that people want. We have just briefly discussed the instant gratification aspect of our lives. And that's exactly. Politicians are smart. They want power. So what they will do to get the power is what they do by telling people what they want to hear. Because after all, they realize that Ghanaians are short-sighted and short memory. So they tell you what they want. I can promise you I'll build, I don't know, I don't want to mention figures or things here, but that's what it is. Both parties, not the NPP or NDC, because these are the two parties that have rulers, and they all promise. My good friend, the president, said he's going to give us 200 colleges or 50, something like that. I'm praying to God he gets the means to do it, because it would be great for the nation to have 200 high schools across the country in 4 years. Is it feasible? I don't know. You see, so politicians are just being true politicians. But it's bad, because there's an ethical side to everything you do. And I think our politicians are not ethical in that respect.
You see, I did a show once upon a time where I was saying that, we have this, what I call thoughtless loyalty. And that I also say that I think the politicians, they have declared their stand. They have told you that, look, when I come into power, I will live a larger life. I will ride in a bigger car. You won't have access to me. I will borrow money in the state's name. At whatever interest they give me, I'll sign. Come back and ask you to pat me on the back. However, we still vote for them. So is it now our fault?
Nana, unfortunately, nobody has taken a serious look at these questions. Elsewhere, I'm sure some scholars, psychologists, and sociologists and anthropologists will have gone into their research laboratories to figure out how to explain that psychological paradox. The fact that this person hit me the other time, he comes again tomorrow, and you stand there and hits you and no reaction. You see, there's something psychological thing we need to understand. We have to find out. You see, maybe we are caught between these two groups. But that's not an excuse. I think that most of us, maybe partly because of the deprivations most of us suffer, the fact that we become so dependent on the other, government or what have you, it makes us very susceptible to these forces coming to us and asking for our support. Because look, both people in the NDC, people in the NPP, they know that their leaders have come to promise them certain things that have never been delivered. And yet, come election,
to queue up,
the same people will queue up, like we said, and vote for them. Somebody has even said that, look, if you put this tag on this dog and bring the dog here as a party of this tag, I'll vote for the dog. It shows you the level, not only of our intelligence, but the level of our perception of life, what life is all about. Because if you go back to the original conversation, talking about saving today for the future and the generations, then we'll be more mindful of what we do today, because we know that what we do today is going to determine what happens tomorrow.
But another thing which amuses about us is we'll queue up for all this long queue, and vote all these people into power. However, if I was driving on the motorway and I saw a pothole, I'll never call the Ministry of... I'll call a radio station. Hello, Kwajo Oponkroma, you won't believe it. I'm on the motorway and there's this. Can you please help us? You know, I've seen an accident. And you never call this so-called... So if indeed we have no faith, why do we queue up? Because after, you're going to ring a radio station and cry for help. Because you know, there's no way if I call that ministry, I'm going to get any help. So let me try and broadcast it. And hopefully,
there'll be a response.
There'll be a response.
Another interesting paradox, isn't it? The faith people have in politicians, the way I see it today, is simple, in simple terms, is faith that brings them instant return. Peoples do key at the doorsteps of ministers and politicians. Not to report the potholes we're talking about, not to report the crime that's been committed, but to do what? To extract their share of the booty that the politicians has made. Simple. That's why politicians are complaining all the time, that there's so much demand on us. Where are the demands coming from? It's coming from their constituencies, because in the first place, you gave me money to vote for you, promising that when you get power, I'll get more. So, you got me power, so I'm coming to you for the more that you promised. I'm not interested in the potholes. That's the level we have reduced our politics to. And it's on both sides. We cannot blame the politicians alone. The electorate, we have also developed the same attitude. So it's like, there's a saying, it takes two to tango, right? So the two were tangoing very well. But unfortunately, Nana, we are tangoing to the destruction of our future, politically, economically, and what have you. The tangoing we are doing today is not going to help us. That's why we are not monitoring effectively our resources. That's how the management of the national resources, both cash and whatever, is being mishandled. Because if I'm a politician and you are coming to me constantly for money, and you know that my salary is barely 5,000, but I'm able to come to the constituency to donate 10,000, if we are sensible, you ask yourself, this man is paid 10,000, 5,000, but he came and gave me 10,000. Where's the money coming from? Of course, it's coming from
your taxes.
Your taxes and other things that I've taken. Exactly. It's as simple as that. So I tell you, we have to be talking about reforms in more serious ways. Reforms in our educational system that will bring a new value system to people. Reforms in our political system that will close the loopholes that enable politicians to siphon public resources. Reforms in the way we manage we handle our investors, so they don't come. Exactly, demand accountability. These are lacking, unfortunately and surprisingly, because Ghana currently is one of the most open countries, the open societies in the world, as a recent poll indicated. When you talk about press freedom, we rank very, very high, competing almost with the United States. But that freedom that the media have gotten, we are not seeing the accountability side, the demand side, that will enable government. Because unfortunately for us also, there is this serious bifurcation in the media world in Ghana, where some papers are dedicated to supporting something good or bad, and vice versa. So we, the readers, will get confused. Because one newspaper said, Bafo has done this. And the same day on the front page of another paper, Bafo is that. I mean, in a better sense. So who is that Bafo? You see, so that in itself is a major confusion.
Sometimes I ask, is there a country for Ghanaians? Because you have to be an MPP Ghanaian or NDC Ghanaian. Is there, if you're just an ordinary Ghanaian, do you have a country?
You do have a country. And I think very soon it will show. We do have a country. Not every Ghanaian is being fooled by what the politicians are doing at all. And I think at the right time, things will break for the better. And things must break.
Would it come early enough?
That's the question. Unfortunately, these things we cannot put time frame on. We cannot put time frame. But you see, when something is going wrong, is bending, it cannot just continue to be. Either it breaks or it pops up. So we have two choices. It may break, or something may happen in that pop up. That's the way I see it.
Should we change our system of democracy? Allow a little more time for the president to work.
No. You see, these questions have been raised many times in many places. You see, and my simple answer is this. If dictatorship could develop Ghana, for that matter, Africa should be the best developed country in the world. Because we have seen the worst form of dictatorships in the world. You know that.
Our two best developmental periods, which is under Nkrumah and under Achampon, they both had 6 years. And they did tremendous. I mean, you cannot even list what they did in 6 years. So
they were under more or less one party
rule. Can we have a system where you allow the president to work? Because at the moment he has 1 year to form a government, 1 year to campaign, and 2 years to work.
In terms of the time limitation, I am one person who has always argued that we should extend the term for the presidency. Earlier, I don't know if today or the other day, I spoke about the fact that we accept these institutions from abroad without accepting the values that accompany them. Mm-hmm. Americans deciding to place 4-year limitation on their president has a reason.
Sorry to interject. The system we borrowed, whereas a system which they had formed after they fought their struggles and everything, and then they adopted the system. But we borrowed it with no struggles at all. So maybe
you can borrow it without a struggle, but then you should be smart enough that you are borrowing the concepts, but the actual practicalization of the concept should depend on your own history and culture and environment. That's the difference. That is exactly the difference. Why is the British maintaining the monarchy and still is a democracy? Why? Why is America without a monarchy and it's a democracy? These are two different cultural milieus, different cultural contexts. So they've decided to keep the monarchy for historical and cultural reasons. We could have also, on that basis, have determined certain institutions according to our own history and culture. I'm not going back to monarchy as you brought the other day. That's not the issue. Okay. But for instance, we are talking about the term limitation. Mm-hmm. Why should we say it should be 4 years? Why not 10 years? Why not 7 years? The French have 7 years. Britain has no term limitation. So far as the electorate wants you, they vote you in and vote you in and vote you in. So Thatcher and Tony Blair could be there for 11, 12 years. Why do we place 4 years on? Because we are enamored by the Americans having 4 years? It makes no sense. So what you are saying, I agree, that the president comes in, first year he's trying to learn the ropes, second year he's trying to get something together, third year elections on the corner, I have to campaign, no time for the president to do these things. And when we had the opportunity to review the Constitution as the late president initiated, we did not even bother to seriously consider. Personally, 7 years is about right. There's a danger there. And every option you take, every decision you make, there's always a downside. If you are frightened away by the downside, it's a choice you make. Because if you give a person a longer year, and you are not lucky to get a person who is a human being,
then we are in trouble.
Then you're in trouble for 7 years. You are locked up for 7 years. So somebody says, let's keep it 4, because in 4 years it's not good, we get rid of it. But then when you get a good person, you get rid of him also in 4 years. You don't have the extra 3 years. So there is a downside to it. But I personally think that even for the 7 years or so, or 6 years, if the person is bad, once you have your institutions there, systems there, and accountability is high from the media civil society, that monster cannot do what it wants to do.
We're coming back right after the break, and then we're going to find out which is the best way out. Do we keep them in a shorter period, or do we keep them in at a longer period and clip their wings? Exactly. Stay tuned. Well, hello and welcome back. Is it going to be 4 years? Is it going to be 7 years? I propose 7 years with clipped wings. I feel that we give the president too much powers. You can take some of the powers out, give it to other areas, decentralize a bit, and keep him there so that at least, 7 years, even though for nation's development is still short term, it will be at least a bit better.
I agree. To be better, the president, whoever he or she is, could have enough room to think for what needs to be done. It won't be too political, as we have currently with the 4 years.
We'll take the power to nominate an IGP from him. What do you think?
That's a little bit problematic because the IGP is one of the chief security operatives in the country that needs to report directly to the president. However, we can modify that. There could be an intermediary, not necessarily the president or the vice president, but there could be a superior body that will be responsible for the IGP. So there's always a way to manufacture, so to speak, to create systems that will insulate the president. But I do agree with you, as you said earlier, that our president has too much powers. It's just like in Liberia where I was. We have what we call imperial presidents, where president appoints everybody from the bottom to the top, you see. And again, if we are smart as a people, we can acknowledge that it's become one of the sources of instability in our political system. Look at the problem President Mahama is going through with appointments, MCEs and DCEs and all that. Look at the trouble. People reacting at times violently in opposition to his nominees. Then we say, okay, let's have decentralized form of system governance. We went through all these so-called constitutional review processes. Overwhelmingly, people say the DCs should be elected by the people themselves. It goes to the presidency, and what do? They say, no, we'll do something different, defying the popular will of the people, you see. So we have that kind of problem. But I do agree that we can find some ingenious ways of insulating the president from so many of their responsibilities so that our presidents can focus on the big issues. There's a story about Ronald Reagan in the United States. Old man becoming president. Former actor has nothing to recommend him. But historically, besides his ideological narrowness, people acknowledge him to be one of the best presidents. An actor. Why? Because he was smart to get the smart people around him to focus on the big issues. The mindset was simple at the time. Soviet Union at the time must not be. We should break down the Berlin Wall. In other words, communism must be defeated. Single-mindedness. And what did he achieve? Before he was out of office, the Soviet Union had collapsed. You see. But the country still ran because he got smart people around him. So, you don't have to be a scientist, you don't have to be a professor, you don't have to be a doctor, you don't have to be anything to be president. Leadership has its own set of skills. And those skills should include the ability to select people to do the work for you.
Education is one thing which I know is dear to your heart.
Yeah, very much so.
And we desperately need to revolutionize education. At the moment, it's political. I come is 3 years, he comes is 4 years, he comes is 5 years, you know. And education, to get a good education now, you need to be close to an urban area. 10 kilometers, 20 kilometers away from an urban area, and then you are gambling with your education.
Correct.
What revolution should we bring?
2 tracks. First is the structure of education itself. And next is the content of the education. When I mention structure, I mean in the structures we put up, we're talking about going, the facilities that students have to study. You're right. 10 kilometers out of the cities, you are always in the bush. Surprisingly. If you drive to downtown Accra, especially the new areas, gated residencies, go to airport residential areas, see the flats there. When you go, you are not in Ghana. You drive just 20 minutes, go to Amasaman and beyond. You are in a different world. This is the kind of things we do to ourselves. So we need to make sure there's equity in the distribution of educational infrastructure. This government, a few years ago, introduced the Schools Under Tree program that was to lead to the elimination of all schools under trees. It was a very commendable initiative. I love it because I have seen schools under trees, kids sitting under trees. I'm not sure whether their claims to having eliminated most of them can hold, because day in and day out, we still have stories of schools. Even sometime in Accra, where schools are still under shades or trees. But I hope they will pick it up again and make sure that this program, in fact, is carried to its logical conclusion, so that we can eliminate this situation of children staying under trees. And that goes along with the other kinds of facilities that all of us need. Wherever we have electricity, we should make sure the new technologies are sent to these areas also. Where we don't have, there are some technologies that rely on solar power. We make sure they have it until they have access to, power grid and all that. So for me, that's very, very important. The second aspect where we need to change or revolutionize, as you said, is the content. I think we have been reticent about what we teach in our schools. And this one, I will not blame government. Government has no authority or power or the know-how to determine the content of our education. The content of education is determined by the educational authorities themselves. In this case, because we have unified system of education, it means the Ministry of Education. And I'm sure they do have a curriculum division within the ministry. University of Cape Coast has a department, if not a faculty, on educational curriculum. These must be the powerhouses that determine the content of what we teach our children. What are we getting? I don't know. But if you look at the various kinds of educational content, where at times you introduce agriculture, we eliminate this, we bring in nutrition, we eliminate this. But I remember when my good friend, late Larry Bimi, was alive, one of his pet things was to get the government to accept to introduce something on democratic governance, if you will, governance, if you will, civics, as we used to have in our days. The government said the curriculum is full. Full of what? You know, some of the challenges we are facing, in my view, is only because we have not been looking at what we are teaching our children and how we teach them. What we teach and how we teach them. If we are not giving our teachers the incentives to be good teachers, you better think twice. Because what they produce today is what is going to determine the future. If we are not satisfied, as I think you said some time ago, with the kinds of ministers we have today, maybe you can trace the problem to how the kind of education that they got when they were growing up. Both from home, through the churches, to the universities.
It's no rocket science. What you see today is what you get tomorrow.
Exactly. Because, see, what we are today is what was given to us yesterday. There's no two ways about that. So we have to have a close look at the content of our curriculum. I believe that we are losing much of our values because our education is not giving the kinds of values, the ethics that all educated people need to have. Education is not just getting to know 1 + 1 or having all the philosophies of life. Education is for living, it's for life. And what is life?
Everything
without ethics, without morality. Religion, that used to be taught in schools, governments of this country say, we don't need that. So they put in something else. But you and I will agree, at least for us, that when we used to have religion in our daycares, in our primary schools and all that, those values may be what have brought us to where we are. You know? So we cannot downplay the role of values in our lives. And values also what comes with ethics. we are living an unethical era where everything is reduced to materialism, to money. We all bemoaning the fact that everybody is going somewhere for money. Because we have lost the values, we have lost the ethics. So by any which way you can make the money, you just go for it. Lack of ethics. So we are looking at changing our educational system, therefore, to begin to bring back those values that will make us a happy people in the right sense in the future.
Just before we round, there's one question I put to all my guests is our culture. I think we're throwing too much of our culture away.
In a way, yes, but I'm a realist. There are certain aspects of culture that will be subject to change because there are certain things that simply you cannot hold on. We understand that. But there are certain aspects also that we must fight to retain. Language. Today, anywhere you go, where I travel in the world, people are fascinated by the fact that in the Ghanaian media, there's a strong component of local languages. This calls in that we all enjoy. When it was in English, you know how many people could call and express themselves? And if they did express themselves, how many people could understand what they were trying to say? But with the local languages, especially the Akan languages, look, everybody has access. So it has allowed the full participation of people in the governance of this country. So when you talk of language, that's exactly what I mean. So language is an aspect.
Protect it.
We need to protect it. Then, of course, there are certain cultural values. Respect for elders. That's why in the book you saw I was a little bit strong on the man. Because the man didn't display that as an elder statesman. You do not go public and tell a president, sitting or otherwise, that you are a Thai or you are a murderer. It shows the lack of ethics and value. You see, that's why I think I was strong on those terms. Because no matter who you are, you cannot stand publicly to degrade an elder, a respectable person. That one is a no-no. So if our kids are learning to insult people who could be their father or grandfathers, it's a reflection of the lack of ethics. I know in recent years, public insults have developed into a part of our political culture, or somebody may say subculture.
And on that note, I say that, yes, I know they say openye nyabone. No, that's not what it meant. You go back in history and you follow that saying, it's just that there's a different way of telling of when an adult goes wrong. You may not be able to reprimand him or her in public, but by all means you reprimand them behind the scenes. Therefore, thank you so much.
It's been a pleasure.
And as soon as you come back, I'm sure I'll have something else to think of, and I'll be back here to talk to you on a different subject. Folks, my name is Nana Nsakwa, and this has been part of our motivational and inspirational heart-to-heart with Bafo Ajimandua. And as I say, tomorrow we'll be back to do it all over again.